2 years ago, I was a budding student chaplain at Holy Cross Hospital. And I was trying to shed these knee-jerk reaction questions that a student chaplain always finds himself asking every time you enter a room. Hi, I'm Brother Brian. How are you? How are you today? And one time I was met with, have you ever been in a hospital bed in constant pain for 4 weeks? Have you ever? It's the question that I always dread being asked in ministry. It's the story topper question that always takes me down a peg and it makes me feel about this big. It assumes way too much and nothing at the same time. And while it's usually a rhetorical question, I always feel like it's a question that begs me to give an answer. Especially if I'm able to relate. And Phil White and Pastoral Counseling 101 can tell you that's not always the best thing to do. It always comes from the depths of somebody's intimate moments with hurt, or loneliness, or depression, or fear, discouragement, anxiety, physical pain. And if I'm trying to make someone feel better, there's no better wall to put up and block me out than a have you ever. Have you ever lost a child, a parent, a sibling? Have you ever been homeless? Have you ever been through chemotherapy? Have you ever known what it's like to be addicted to heroin? Have you ever been married? Have you ever been through a divorce? These and many others are all questions that I've experienced in ministry in one form or another. And each one leaves me in the same shoes as Job in today's first reading, with my hand over my mouth, speechless, feeling like the smallest person in the world. Today's reading has God starting off a list of have you ever's for Job. And God lays it on pretty thick. In my Bible, there's actually a footnote at verse 21, where this divine irony gets really bad. God says, tell me if you know it all. You know because you were born then, and the number of your days is great. The footnote says, this is ironic, but not a harsh rebuke. Where I come from, that kind of sarcasm get you slapped. All things considered, though, in this context, it's Job doing the suffering, and God asking the story topper question. Quite the opposite of what I'm used to hearing. But in this very detailed curriculum vitae of God's creative power, it puts Job's suffering into perspective for him. And it gives Job a God's eye view of everything. And allows Job to almost enter into God's omniscience. Job realizes that God has everything under control, despite his own complaining. Job's silence is a cautious silence, but it's also an extremely humble one. In this daring adventure of love that we're embarking on, it's a humility that we're called to put on when we're approached with the same questions from those we encounter on a daily basis. Because Capuchins aren't story toppers. No matter how many times you might hear a brother try to outdo another one in college. When we hear that, have you ever, we don't see it as a roadblock to understanding, or a white flag to give up and move to the next hospital bed. This is an invitation to put our hands over our mouth and enter into those places where we don't usually want to go. But because we've consecrated ourselves to a God who's always in control and gives hope to the hopeless, we humble ourselves and let our silence bring us down into the trenches with those who need Him most. I'm beginning to learn that true compassion comes not from some forced form of my affection or love. It's more so from like Job-like encounter with God. Our silent surrender gives the courage to replace all our fumbled explanations and answers with a true humility that I think breaks down walls and opens doors for communion with those who are so desperately seeking it.